Let me start with the truth. Most people will try to avoid. You don't lack potential, you don't lack time, you don't lack opportunity. What you lack is ownership. And until you take ownership, every year will look different on the calendar, but identical in your results. 2026 is not special because it's a new year. 2026 becomes powerful only if you decide to stop excusing and start executing. Here's what I've learned. Excuses are invisible chains. You can't see them, but they keep you exactly where you are. People say, I'll start when the timing is right. Let me tell you something. Timing is never right. The people who win don't wait for perfect conditions. They move with imperfect courage. If you keep blaming your background, your finances, your age, your past, you're giving away your power. And anytime you give away power, someone else controls your future. Most people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they negotiate with themselves. They wake up tired and say, I'll do it tomorrow. They feel fear and say, what if it doesn't work? Let me be clear, the cost of discipline is always less than the cost of regret. Discipline hurts for a moment, regret hurts for a lifetime. 2026 must be the year you stop negotiating with weakness and start enforcing standards. Understand this principle. Your life moves in the direction of your dominant decisions, not your intentions, not your goals, your decisions. If you decide to keep excusing, you'll keep explaining. If you decide to take responsibility, you'll start seeing results. High-level people don't ask, who's to blame? They ask, what can I control? And the moment you focus on what you can control, your life accelerates. Let me give you a hook you should never forget. The person you're becoming is more important than the money you're chasing. Money follows value. Success follows skill. Confidence follows competence. And competence only comes from doing the work when you don't feel like it. Motivation is temporary or comfortable. That identity will never produce extraordinary results. Consider this. The brain's primary job is not to help you succeed, it's to help you survive. Excuses are survival mechanisms. They protect you from failure, rejection, embarrassment, and effort. But what protects you from short-term pain often guarantees long-term regret. When you excuse yourself, you avoid discomfort today, but create disappointment tomorrow. And the dangerous part is this. Excuses don't hurt immediately. They feel harmless in the moment, which is why they are so destructive over time. High performers don't eliminate excuses by becoming more motivated. They eliminate excuses by changing their internal agreements. They stop asking, how do I feel, and start asking, what is required? That shift alone changes behavior. When you operate based on requirements instead of emotions, excuses lose their authority. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need to feel confident. You don't need perfect clarity. You only need a decision. That action is no longer optional. Another hook to remember, excuses are expensive, but the bill always arrives later. You pay with missed opportunities, stalled progress, and the quiet frustration of knowing you could have done more. Over time, excuses erode self-trust. When you repeatedly promise yourself action and deliver explanations instead, you stop believing your own word. And once you lose trust in yourself, confidence collapses. Discipline is not about being hard on yourself. It's about keeping promises to yourself. The fastest way to expose an excuse is to ask one question. Does this explanation move me forward or keep me comfortable? If it keeps you comfortable, it's not a reason, it's resistance. Progress always requires friction. There is no growth without tension. People who win in life don't have fewer excuses available to them. They simply refuse to use them. They understand that conditions are never perfect, but commitment can be. When you stop excusing, something powerful happens. Energy shifts, focus sharpens. You stop looking for permission and start creating momentum. Responsibility becomes liberating instead of heavy, because the moment you accept that your outcomes are connected to your decisions, you also accept that change is available now. Not someday, not next year, not after one more setback. Excuses are not the enemy. Unconscious excuses are. Once you see them for what they are, choices, you can replace them with better choices. Action becomes a habit. Standards become non-negotiable. And slowly, almost quietly, your life begins to reflect a person who no longer explains why they couldn't, but demonstrates why they did. Most people misunderstand ownership. They think ownership means blame, pressure, or carrying the weight of everything that goes wrong. That misunderstanding alone keeps them weak. Ownership is not about criticizing yourself. It is about positioning yourself. The moment you take ownership, you place yourself in the only position where change is possible. If it's someone else's fault, someone else has the power. If it's your responsibility, the power comes back to you. Here's a hook that separates high performers from the rest. Responsibility is not heavy, it is freeing. The absence of ownership feels comfortable, but comfort is expensive. When you blame circumstances, people, systems, or timing, you temporarily protect your ego, but you permanently delay your progress. Ownership doesn't ask, who caused this? Ownership asks, what can I do next? That single question moves you from victimhood into leadership. High-level individuals understand a principle most people never adopt. You may not be responsible for everything that happens to you, but you are responsible for how you respond to everything that happens to you. That mindset alone collapses excuses. It removes the emotional dependency on fairness, approval, and validation. You stop waiting for life to parade and start cooperating with reality. And reality always rewards those who work with it instead of complaining about it. Blame feels powerful in the moment because it gives you a story where you are justified, misunderstood, or unlucky. But stories don't build results. Skills do, standards do, action does. When you take ownership, you stop rehearsing explanations and start building solutions. You stop wasting energy proving why something wasn't your fault and start investing energy into making sure it doesn't happen again. That shift alone compounds over time. Another hook worth remembering: ownership turns problems into assets. Every challenge becomes data. Every mistake becomes feedback. Every setback becomes training. When you own your outcomes, you no longer fear failure because failure loses its meaning. It becomes information, not identity. People who lack ownership fear mistakes because mistakes expose them. People who embrace ownership use mistakes because mistakes refine them. Ownership also eliminates emotional chaos. When you don't own your results, your emotions are controlled by external events. You're confident when things go well and discouraged when they don't. Ownership stabilizes you. You remain composed under pressure because you understand that progress is built over time, not decided by one moment. That emotional maturity is what allows leaders to make clear decisions while others react impulsively. There is a level of confidence that only ownership can create, not the loud performative confidence that seeks validation, but the quiet confidence that comes from self-trust. When you consistently take responsibility, you prove to yourself that you can handle life. You stop needing reassurance because you've built evidence. That evidence becomes internal authority. And internal authority is what separates leaders from followers. Many people wait to feel powerful before they take ownership. That's backward. Ownership is what creates power. The act of saying, "This is mine to fix," immediately shifts your posture, your thinking, and your behavior. You begin to look for leverage instead of sympathy. You begin to ask better questions. You begin to notice options that were invisible before because your mind is no longer distracted by blame. The truth is, ownership is not about control over everything. It's about control or something. And that something is always enough to move forward. You may not control the economy, the past, or other people, but you control your effort, your standards, and your response. When you fully accept that, momentum becomes inevitable. Progress stops being a matter of luck and starts becoming a matter of alignment. Ownership is the bridge between intention and execution. Without it, goals stay theoretical. With it, action becomes inevitable. The moment you stop saying, "This happened to me," and start saying, "This is mine to handle," you step into a level of clarity and strength that most people never experience. And once you experience it, you never want to give it back. Most people avoid discipline because they believe it is painful, restrictive, and exhausting. They see discipline as punishment instead of protection. What they fail to calculate is the hidden cost of avoiding it. Discipline asks for effort up front, but regret charges interest over time. And the interest rate is brutal. Missed opportunities, wasted potential, and quiet self-disappointment accumulate slowly, then suddenly. By the time most people feel the weight of regret, the price has already multiplied. Here's a hook that changes perspective. Discipline hurts once. Regret hurts every day. Discipline is waking up early when your body wants comfort. Regret is waking up years later realizing you never became who you knew you could be. One pain is temporary, the other becomes permanent. The mistake is not that people choose pain, they do. The mistake is that they choose the pain that lasts longer because it feels easier in the moment. Discipline is misunderstood because people confuse it with intensity. Discipline is not about doing extreme things. It's about doing simple things consistently. It's making decisions in advance so emotions don't get to vote later. Regret, on the other hand, is emotional chaos. It shows up when discipline was delayed too long. It whispers questions that have no answers. What if I had started earlier? What if I had stayed consistent? What if I hadn't quit? Those questions don't motivate you. They drain you. Another hook worth sitting with: the pain you avoid today will introduce itself tomorrow with more authority. When you skip discipline, you don't skip consequences, you postpone them. The gym avoided today becomes the doctor's office tomorrow. The skill not learned becomes the opportunity missed. The conversation not had becomes the relationship broken. Discipline is preventative. Regret is reactive. High performers choose prevention over repair. People often say they don't have the energy for discipline. What they really mean is they don't yet have the identity for it. Discipline is not about willpower, it's about self-respect. When you respect yourself, you do what aligns with your future, not what satisfies your present. Regret grows where self-respect was repeatedly compromised. Every time you say just this once and it becomes a habit, you train regret quietly. Discipline also creates momentum, while regret creates hesitation. When you act with discipline, even imperfectly, you build evidence that you can be trusted with responsibility. That evidence strengthens confidence. Regret does the opposite. It weakens self-trust. When you repeatedly disappoint yourself, you stop believing your own commitments. That loss of trust is heavier than any workout routine or early morning ever could be. Here's a hard truth: regret doesn't come from failure, it comes from inaction. Most people don't regret trying and falling short. They regret not trying at all. They regret waiting, hesitating, and letting fear make decisions for them. Discipline gives you something regret never will: pride. Not loud pride, but quiet satisfaction. The kind that lets you sleep at night knowing you did your part. Discipline simplifies life. Regret complicates it. Discipline reduces decisions because your standards are already set. Regret multiplies decisions because you are constantly reacting to problems that could have been prevented. One creates structure. ALS can inspire you, but identity commands you. Goals are something you visit. Identity is where you live. Most people try to change outcomes by increasing effort, but effort without identity alignment creates burnout. You can force yourself to act against your self-image for a while, but eventually you snap back to who you believe you are. That's why temporary motivation fades. Identity never does. When you decide, I am the kind of person who finishes what I start, your brain begins looking for ways to prove that true. When you decide, I am someone who shows up daily, consistency becomes natural instead of forced. Another hook worth remembering: your life is always proving you right about yourself. If you believe you're unlucky, life will give you evidence. If you believe you're capable, life will give you opportunities to demonstrate it. Identity is a filter. It shapes how you interpret setbacks, feedback, and pressure. Two people can experience the same failure. One sees it as confirmation of weakness, the other sees it as refinement. The difference is not intelligence, it's identity. Identity also determines what you tolerate. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your standards. And standards are simply behaviors that align with identity. A person who sees themselves as a professional doesn't wait to feel like working. A person who sees themselves as a leader doesn't avoid hard conversations. A person who sees themselves as disciplined doesn't rely on motivation. Identity removes debate. It replaces should I with this is who I am. Many people wait for proof before they change identity. That's backward. Identity comes first, proof follows. You don't become consistent. After you succeed after you decide you are consistent. The decision is internal, but the effects are external. Once identity shifts, habits follow. Once habits follow, results compound. This is why lasting change feels almost boring from the outside. It's not dramatic, it's aligned. There's also a quiet confidence that comes from identity-based action. When you act from identity, you don't need applause. You don't need validation. You don't need permission. You operate from internal authority. That authority stabilizes you during pressure because you're not trying to become something. You already decided who you are. Failure no longer threatens you because it doesn't redefine you. It simply informs you. Here's a powerful hook: identity is the most efficient form of discipline. When identity is clear, discipline requires less effort. You don't debate whether to act, you default to it. That mental efficiency frees energy for creativity, focus, and execution. People who struggle with discipline often don't need better systems. They need a stronger self-definition. Every day, through small choices, you cast votes for the type of person you are becoming. One action rarely changes identity, but repeated actions lock it in. That's why consistency matters more than intensity. Identity is not built in moments of inspiration, it's built in moments of decision, especially when no one is watching. When you stop asking, what do I want to do today? And start asking, who am I becoming today? Everything changes. Time becomes intentional. Effort becomes focused. Progress becomes predictable. Identity drives outcomes, whether you design it or let it drift. And the moment you consciously choose it, your behavior no longer needs to be forced. It becomes inevitable. Most people overestimate what intensity can do and underestimate what consistency can build. They wait for the perfect surge of motivation, the perfect plan, or the perfect moment to go all in. But progress doesn't respond to occasional effort. It responds to repeated behavior. Consistency is not glamorous, and that's exactly why it works. It operates quietly while others are busy announcing intentions. Here's a hook that challenges how most people think. Consistency is not about doing more. It's about missing less. The people who separate themselves from the crowd are rarely the most talented. They are the most reliable. They show up when it's boring. They execute when there is no applause. They understand that success is not created in bursts. It's created in patterns. Consistency creates separation because it compounds. One action doesn't change much, but the repetition of that action changes everything. One workout doesn't transform a body, but years of training do. One page doesn't write a book, but daily writing does. One conversation doesn't build a network, but consistent connection does. What most people call luck is often the visible result of invisible consistency. Another hook worth remembering: consistency builds credibility, first with yourself and then with the world. When you repeatedly do what you said you would do, you build self-trust. That self-trust becomes confidence. People who lack confidence often don't need more encouragement, they need more follow-through. Confidence is earned through evidence, not affirmations. Consistency also simplifies decision-making. When your behavior is consistent, you don't waste energy deciding whether to act. You already decided. Standards replace moods is not in never falling off, but in always getting back on. Over time, that refusal to quit creates a level of separation that talent alone can never close. Most people make decisions every day, but very few make definitive decisions. They decide with conditions attached. I'll try, I'll see how it goes. I'll do it if I feel ready. Those are not decisions, they're negotiations. And anything you negotiate with daily will eventually defeat you. Progress begins when a decision is made once, clearly, and without escape routes. Here's a hook that exposes the gap between intention and execution. The quality of your life is determined less by how many decisions you make and more by how few you have to make repeatedly. When you decide once, you remove friction. When you decide daily, you create fatigue. High performers conserve mental energy by eliminating unnecessary choices. They lock in standards so execution becomes automatic. Most people believe flexibility is strength. In reality, flexibility without structure becomes inconsistency. When everything is optional, nothing gets done. Deciding once creates a non-negotiable framework. You no longer wake up asking whether you should act, you wake up knowing you will. That certainty shifts behavior immediately. Clarity doesn't come from thinking more, it comes from deciding more firmly. Another hook worth remembering: indecision is a hidden form of self-sabotage. It feels harmless, even intelligent, but it slowly erodes momentum. Each time you delay a decision, you teach yourself that hesitation is acceptable. Each time you decide once and follow through, you teach yourself that action is your default. Identity is shaped not just by what you do, but by how decisively you do it. Deciding once does not mean perfection. It means commitment. You don't decide that everything will go smoothly. You decide that you will not quit. That distinction matters. Execution is not about flawless performance. It's about consistent follow-through. When you remove the option to stop, your brain shifts from avoidance to problem solving. You stop asking, should I continue? And start asking, how do I improve? Execution is where most people fall apart because it exposes resistance. Planning feels productive, learning feels safe, talking feels impressive, execution feels vulnerable. It requires you to risk being wrong, slow, or imperfect. That's why deciding once is so powerful. It forces you through discomfort instead of around it. And discomfort is where growth hides. Here's another hook. You don't rise to the level of your ambition. You fall to the level of your systems. Daily execution is not heroic, it's procedural. It's showing up when there's no urgency and no pressure. That kind of execution is only possible when the decision has already been made. Otherwise, emotions will override intention every time. Many people wait for confidence before they execute. That sequence never works. Confidence is built through execution, not before it. The first reps are always uncomfortable. The early stages are always clumsy. But once execution becomes routine, confidence becomes inevitable. Deciding once removes the emotional barrier to starting again and again. Execution also creates feedback, and feedback creates refinement. You cannot improve what you do not execute. Thinking does not sharpen skill. Action does. When you commit to daily execution, even at a small scale, you enter a loop of progress. You act, you learn, you adjust, you act again. That loop compounds faster than any burst of motivation ever could. Deciding once also builds integrity. When your actions consistently align with your commitments, you begin to trust yourself. That trust is rare and powerful. It becomes internal authority. You no longer need reminders, threats, or external pressure. You move because you said you would. That level of self-alignment is what separates professionals from amateurs. The danger of not deciding once is that life decides for you. Time passes, opportunities close, habits harden. When you finally feel the urgency to act, the cost is higher. Deciding once protects you from drift. It anchors you. It turns intention into direction and direction into movement. Daily execution is not about intensity. It's about inevitability. When the decision is settled, execution becomes a matter of routine, not emotion. You stop relying on willpower and start relying on structure. And once execution becomes predictable, progress stops being a question and starts becoming a pattern. So here's my challenge to you. Make a decision so strong that excuses don't survive in its presence. Decide that 2026 is the year you stop explaining and start elevating. Stop wishing, stop waiting, stop excusing. The future you want is on the other side of the discipline you've been avoiding. Step into it, own it, and make this the year your results finally introduce you before your words ever have to.